The smell reaches them first. Sweet, thick, unmistakable. 90,000 soldiers, the most powerful military force in the known world, stand frozen on a hillside overlooking the Wallachian capital. No one gave the order to stop. They simply cannot move forward. Before them stretches a forest, not of trees, of stakes. 20,000 Ottoman prisoners, impaled on sharpened wooden poles, arranged in perfect rows facing south. Facing the army. Facing the Sultan himself. Sultan Mehmed II, 29 years old, conqueror of Constantinople, the man who shattered the walls of the greatest city in Christendom, stares at the field of the dead. His chroniclers will later note that he said nothing. For 17 minutes, the conqueror of the world sat motionless on his horse. This is not a battlefield. This is a verdict. And the man who rendered it is watching from the Carpathian foothills, 3 miles north, counting the seconds of Ottoman paralysis. His name is Vlad III, voivode of Wallachia. The Turks call him Kazikli Bey, the Impaler Prince. Europe knows him only through rumor and terror. But on this June morning, he has achieved something no Christian ruler has managed in 2 centuries. He has made the Ottoman Empire afraid. How did a prince of a forgotten principality, commanding barely 20,000 men, humiliate an army of 100,000? The answer lies not in superior tactics or divine intervention. It lies in understanding something fundamental about power. Empires are not defeated by armies. They are defeated by doubt. To understand June 1462, we must understand the mathematics of conquest. The Ottoman Empire of Sultan Mehmed II was not merely large, it was overwhelming. Since the fall of Constantinople on May 29, 1453, the Sultan had transformed his realm into a war machine without parallel. His Janissary Corps, slave soldiers taken as boys from Christian families, trained from childhood in absolute loyalty, numbered 40,000. His cavalry, the Sipahi, could field another 60,000 mounted warriors. His artillery train included bombards capable of reducing fortress walls to rubble in hours. Against this, Wallachia could muster perhaps 22,000 fighting men. Farmers, minor nobility, mercenaries held together by desperation and the personal authority of their voivode. They possessed no artillery to speak of. Their fortifications were wooden palisades, not stone walls. Their cavalry was light, fast, but fragile against the Ottoman hammer. The ratio was nearly 5 to 1. By every conventional measure, the outcome was predetermined. But Vlad III was not a conventional ruler, and his education in Ottoman methods had come at a terrible cost. In 1442, Vlad's father, Vlad II Dracul, sent his 2 youngest sons to the Ottoman court as hostages. This was standard diplomatic practice, insurance against rebellion. For 6 years, the young Vlad lived among the Turks. He learned their language. He studied their military tactics. He observed their methods of control. He also watched. He watched what happened to Christian territories that submitted, the tribute payments that bled economies dry, the devshirm system that took boys from their families to become janissaries, soldiers who would one day march against their own people. The slow erosion of faith, law, and identity until nothing remained but a province with a local name. Vlad's younger brother, Radu, adapted. He converted. He became a favorite of the Sultan, beautiful and compliant. But Vlad refused. The Ottomans noted his defiance. They noted his hatred. They released him eventually. He was more useful as a potential puppet ruler than as a prisoner, but they never forgot his eyes. In psychology, we understand that sustained exposure to a controlling force can produce 2 responses, compliance or crystallized resistance. Vlad crystallized. Every year in Ottoman captivity taught him not only how the empire functioned, but exactly where it was vulnerable. By 1456, through a combination of Hungarian backing and personal ruthlessness, Vlad had secured the Wallachian throne. For 6 years, he paid the Sultan's tribute. He maintained the facade of submission, but he was building something beneath the surface. A network of informants in Ottoman territory, caches of weapons in the Carpathian forests, a reputation for such extreme brutality that his own boyars, the Wallachian nobility, feared to conspire against him. He impaled criminals. He impaled corrupt merchants. He impaled anyone who threatened the fragile unity of his realm. The terror was not madness, it was policy. In late 1461, Sultan Mehmed's envoys arrived at Vlad's court. Their demands were simple: increased tribute and, crucially, 500 Wallachian boys for Janissary training. The Sultan also requested that Vlad personally travel to Constantinople to renew his oath of fealty. Every advisor understood what the second demand meant. Vlad would not return from Constantinople. The Sultan intended to replace him with his brother Radu, now fully Ottomanized and eager to rule. The court waited. The envoys waited. What happened next exists in multiple historical accounts, though details vary. Vlad asked why the envoys had not removed their turbans in his presence, a sign of disrespect. When they explained that their custom forbade it, Vlad ordered the turbans nailed to their heads. The envoys were then impaled in the courtyard, their bodies left for the crows. This was not rage. This was calculation. Vlad understood that once Sultan Mehmed learned of this insult, invasion was inevitable. By killing the envoys, he had purchased exactly one thing: time. Time to prepare, while the massive Ottoman war machine mobilized. He had perhaps 4 months. The Ottoman army crossed into Wallachia on May 23, 1462. Contemporary sources estimate between 90 and 150,000 men. Even the conservative figure represents the largest military force assembled in Europe since the Roman legions. Sultan Mehmed rode at the head, supremely confident. This would be a punitive expedition. 3 weeks, perhaps 4, to crush the impudent prince and install Radu as a loyal vassal. His supply train carried enough provisions for a short campaign. His soldiers expected easy plunder from Wallachian villages. They found ash. Vlad had given the order weeks before: total destruction. Every village in the Ottoman path was to be evacuated, every field burned, every well poisoned, every bridge destroyed. The population, men, women, children, fled into the Carpathian forests, taking their livestock and what grain they could carry. This tactic has ancient roots. The Scythians used it against Darius of Persia. The Russians would use it against Napoleon 3 centuries later. But rarely has it been executed with such absolute commitment. Vlad was not merely denying supplies to the enemy. He was erasing his own country from the map. The human cost was catastrophic. Thousands of Wallachians died in the forests, of exposure, of hunger, of disease. Vlad knew this when he gave the order. He made the calculation anyway. The Ottoman army pushed deeper into the wasteland. By June 3rd, their supplies were already straining. Horses were weakening from lack of fodder. Soldiers were drinking from muddy streams. And then the nights began. Vlad's forces, small mobile units of 50 to 200 men, struck every night. They knew the terrain. They moved without torches. They targeted the edges of the camp, killing sentries, cutting horse tethers, setting fire to supply wagons and vanishing before any organized response could form. The psychological effect was devastating. Ottoman soldiers learned that the darkness belonged to the enemy. Sleep became impossible. Men stood watch in pairs, then in fours, then refused to stand watch at all. Officers reported that soldiers were firing their weapons at shadows, at sounds, at nothing. By June 10th, the Ottoman army had covered barely 50 miles in 18 days. They were exhausted, paranoid, and increasingly demoralized. And Vlad was not finished. On the night of June 16th, the Ottoman army encamped in a broad valley, 12 miles south of the Wallachian capital. 90,000 men settled into uneasy rest. Sultan Mehmed retired to his command tent, surrounded by his Janissary guard. 3 miles away, in the darkness of the forest, Vlad assembled his strike force. The sources vary on the exact number, somewhere between 7 and 10,000 cavalry. His officers believed he had lost his mind. To attack a force of 90,000 with 10,000 was suicide. But Vlad had not come to win a battle. He had come to kill a sultan. At 1 a.m. on June 17th, the Wallachian cavalry moved out. Horses' hooves were wrapped in cloth to muffle sound. Torches were covered. They approached the Ottoman camp in 3 columns, guided by scouts who had mapped every sentry position. At 2:17 a.m., Vlad gave the signal. The Wallachian cavalry exploded from the tree line on three sides of the camp, torches blazing, screaming in Turkish, phrases Vlad had taught them, designed to maximize confusion. The Ottoman camp dissolved into madness. Men could not tell friend from enemy. The darkness swallowed tactical coordination. Units that tried to form were scattered by stampeding horses. Fires spread from tent to tent. Vlad's cavalry did not stop to fight. They drove deeper, toward the center, toward the Sultan's pavilion. The objective was singular: reach Mehmed, kill Mehmed. If the Sultan fell, the invasion ended. Word reached the Sultan's guard at 2:31 a.m. They pulled Mehmed from his tent, threw armor over his shoulders, and formed a fighting square around him. The Janissaries were the finest infantry in the world, disciplined, fanatical, trained for exactly this moment. Vlad's cavalry crashed against them like a wave against a cliff. Men fell on both sides. The Sultan's standards swayed. For 14 minutes the fate of empires hung in the balance. But the guard held, and Vlad saw the eastern sky beginning to lighten. Dawn was coming. In daylight, his 10,000 would be surrounded and annihilated. At 2:45 a.m., he ordered the withdrawal. The Wallachians scattered back into the forests as quickly as they had come. Behind them, the Ottoman camp burned. Casualty estimates vary widely, between 5,000 and 15,000 Ottoman dead. The Wallachians lost perhaps 1,000, but the numbers were irrelevant. Sultan Mehmed II, conqueror of Constantinople, had nearly been killed in his own camp. The myth of Ottoman invincibility had cracked. The Sultan ordered the advance to continue. He would not be turned back by a night raid. The army marched toward the capital. They found the gates open, the streets empty. No defenders, no population, nothing to conquer. And beyond the city, the forest of stakes. 20,000 prisoners, captured in raids over the previous months, impaled and arranged to face the Ottoman advance. Soldiers, collaborators, anyone who had aided the empire. This was not merely execution. This was communication. You are not conquerors here. You are prey. The Ottoman chronicles record what happened next with unusual brevity. Sultan Mehmed gave the order to withdraw, not a retreat. Officially, he declared victory and installed Radu as puppet voivode. But the army marched south, leaving Wallachia unconquered. The empire that had broken Constantinople turned back before a field of corpses. Vlad's victory was temporary. Within 3 years, Ottoman-backed forces would drive him from power. He died in December 1476, killed in battle or possibly assassinated by his own men. He was approximately 45 years old. History remembers him as a monster. German pamphlets spread stories of his dining among the impaled. Bram Stoker would transform him into a vampire 4 centuries later. The West needed him to be evil because the alternative was too uncomfortable. In Romania, the memory is different. Here, he is the prince who refused submission, who understood that against an empire, mercy is interpreted as weakness, who made his enemies fear victory more than defeat. Wallachia remained unconquered, not free, not truly, for centuries to come, but unconquered. The stakes stood for years, visible from the roads, a warning that some lands cost more than they are worth. Vlad III did not save Europe through heroism. He saved it through horror. And that distinction between what we wish our heroes were and what survival actually requires remains one of history's most uncomfortable lessons. The Ottoman Empire would endure for another 4 centuries, but they never forgot the summer of 1462. They never forgot the prince who made them afraid of the dark.